Welcome to another Kundalini After Dark session. I'm your host, Brent Spirit. I'm here on Zoom. We've got 18 in the Zoom room. We've got a few tuning in on YouTube. Thank you all so much for joining. If you're listening in the archive, you can join the next Kundalini After Dark session. The link is in the description, along with links to a bunch of other free things. Check it all out. So today I don't really have a topic in mind. I'm feeling kind of open. And so I put out some feelers on the Facebook group here, and we got a few great suggestions of topics to talk about today. So I'll just read them out, comment a little bit, and then I'll open the floor for others to share about whatever's on your mind. Maybe some of these topics will prompt you to share. Maybe you've got something already brewing that you'd like to talk about with everyone today. Maybe you've got some interesting things to celebrate. Maybe you've got some questions for the group. Maybe you have some responses to other people's questions. Whatever it is, you can vent, you can cry, we can complain here as well. All is welcome. This is Kundalini After Dark. So Hugo shared on Facebook a great topic here, which was the importance of holding space and community, feeling heard, seen, and acknowledged being the first port of call. I think that's brilliant, and that's exactly what we're attempting to do here is to hold space for one another in this community. I think that is the most beneficial theme on this path is knowing that we're not alone. We haven't gone crazy. The others are going through this. There's other people that can relate with us, can empathize with us, right? It's very, very important. I think at one point I mentioned to somebody that the most important moment on my Kundalini awakening journey wasn't this major energetic explosion of Shakti up my spinal column. It was actually the moment when I realized someone else had experienced this too. So I had this major rising. I didn't really know what had happened to me. And then so for a couple weeks, I was wandering around like a complete wreck, unsure of what was going on. And finally, I came across through the flow, through synchronicity, through grace, someone else who had had an awakening. And I said, "Hey, I had this thing. I think it's a Kundalini awakening. Have you had any experience with this? Do you know what this is?" And that was my shot in the dark. And they responded saying, "Oh, yeah, yeah, this happened to me many years ago." And so that was a key moment on my path, knowing that I hadn't completely lost my mind or gone crazy. Someone else had experienced this. So that was a huge thing for me. And so that's what I'd like to offer others here and give others an opportunity to offer that to others as well, right? To hold space for one another, right? To feel heard, to feel seen, especially in this society where spirituality isn't as acknowledged as maybe in some other cultures or communities, right? Here in the West, a lot of what we may describe as spiritual phenomena can be labeled as something going wrong, right? And so to be heard, to be seen by others who are grounded, stable, sane, empowered, so it goes a long way. It goes a long way. So that's a great topic there, Hugo. Thanks for mentioning that one here, and maybe that'll inspire some others to comment on this theme, as well as to recognize that we are here in a safe place where we can share about what we've experienced, perhaps for the first time ever. You're welcome to. You're welcome to share about some of your far out experiences, knowing that we're not here to share from, it's not egotistical if you want to describe some far out mystical phenomena that you may have experienced. We're here to share, to relate, to gather more data, to make more sense of this whole thing. So it's all welcome here. Tracy shared here a great topic as well, which was this general question of why Kundalini process may be more difficult or complicated, longer for some than for others, right? So do some have heavier karma or some older souls? Not really sure. I have some ideas, but I imagine others have some ideas about this as well. I think the safest, perhaps a little bit flippant answer to this question is we don't compare with others. That keeps us from getting caught up in feeling, why me? Why is it so hard for me and it wasn't hard for others, right? But of course, beyond that, we can inquire a little bit into why we have these different qualities of our awakening experiences, right? I think it has to do with how things have played out over multiple lifetimes, right? So I remember previous lifetimes where it wasn't easy at all. It wasn't easy like how it may have been in this life. And then in this life, compared to others, maybe mine was uh, pretty hard compared to some other people. I don't really know. Everyone has their own awakening process and journey. Um, it can, of course, bring you down if you realize that you're having a really hard time compared to others who are describing bliss and magic and everything is going well, right? So that's why we want to avoid comparison. But we're here to talk about it. Maybe some others have some ideas to unpack around this idea. Even if you want to vent about it, you're welcome to, because I get it. I get it. Kat shared some topics here as well. Lots of great ones. Siddhis / psychic abilities, twin flames, spiritual emergencies, astral travel / out of body experiences, and entities / aliens. Lots to unpack there. Lots. Great topic. So I'll leave it at that. I hope that this has prompted some things to come up for everyone today. We'll see where it goes. Like I said, all is welcome here. If you might share something a little intense, just keep in mind that some are very sensitive. So give them a bit of a disclaimer, a bit of a trigger warning so they can take some space. Um, Remembering here that we're not here to discuss medical advice. This is not a substitute for counseling or psychotherapy. We're just meeting online to have a conversation about spirituality, to support one another. Thank you all for joining, and thank you to everyone for all of your support, your donations, your engagement online. It goes a long way. Check out the links in the description for a bunch of free things, free courses. We've got kundaliniawareness.org, where there's a directory of licensed mental health professionals with Kundalini awakening experience there to support you, as well as a collection of stories submitted by people like yourself about their Kundalini awakening experiences. There's some peer support groups. There's some resources, some books and videos. Check it all out. Okay. So let's hear from Tom, and then we'll check out what's going on in the chat. Welcome, everyone that's just joined. Thank you so much. Hey, Tom.
Hey, everyone. I just had a comment on comparison, comparing oneself to others and not being happy. I Someone else you're having a hard time yourself, say, and you're watching someone else who seems to be having a really good time, blissful time. And I spent 17 years in that condition, just basically having wonderful experiences and all kinds of stuff. Great. And then suddenly, Kundalini came upon something in me that had to be dissolved, which was horrifying and terrible, and just made me want to commit suicide eventually because when you lost a huge amount of weight and couldn't eat, couldn't digest anything, couldn't was burning up inside and need to take ice cold showers 10 times a day, and so it'll happen to you eventually. Hate to say that, I'm not trying to be too facetious, but we all have things, unless we've really had some wonderful past lives. We come to this carrying some karma, and it's going to be dissolved eventually. So if it happens, don't worry about it. 5 years after that experience, I'm doing really well. And so it just takes surrendering to the process, talking to the goddess, being friends with her. And anyway, that's what I had to do it. And then Brent suggested the same thing, to let yourself go into it. And I'm not very good at that yet. I'm doing it very slowly. There's always hesitation. It's like ice cold water to jump into. Like I'd rather wade into it slowly, even though it's protracted. It isn't quite the same chakra system. However, whatever, as what you said last time, what is it? Everything's printed on your soul.
Hmm.
Your destiny is printed on your soul. Was that it? Something like that. Uh,
Hmm.
so whether I run in fast or slow, uh, I'm gonna get there. Maybe not this lifetime, maybe the next. Doesn't really matter. It's, am I in a rush? That's the question. Am I really in a rush to like? Sorry, I'm rambling a bit, but there's a Japanese curse from way back when, sort of, may you reach full enlightenment in a week, which means that will Kundalini tear through your body in 1 week, and what happens, but the meaning is you're going to have excruciating suffering for a week and then die because your body can't handle that much energy. Like, so, you're in a hurry or not? That's uh anyhow. So I have to
Yeah.
say about that. Take care, guys.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Yeah. Now that's a very interesting curse that contextualizes how challenging this process can be. Definitely. Yeah. And we don't want to become attached. When things are going well, we also don't want to become attached to that, you know? Everything changes. Everything changes. There's no like you've made it and then it does stops changing. It just keeps changing, right? So, thank you, Tom. Yeah. Sarah shares here in the chat, I've never met anyone or had ever heard of it, but I had an unexpected, sudden, accidental awakening and stumbled upon Kundalini Awakening on Google. I'm thankful to meet this community. Similar to Brent, I went crazy. I really thought I had psychosis for several months. Yeah, well, welcome, Sarah. We're happy to have you here. You're not alone. Not alone. There are many, especially lately. I don't know if it's just what some pattern that I've noticed, but I've noticed many people within the past month saying, I had a Kundalini awakening last week, yesterday, 2 weeks ago. Some interesting things like that are happening. I've been noticing in the comments, people have been commenting on some of my videos saying, hey, this happened to me like literally last night. Maybe there's something going on in I don't know, whatever this collective ascension is, however you'd like to call it. EE is describing the jaw chattering, words coming out of my mouth. They came out as though I was chattering in the cold for a couple weeks. Yeah, something like this happened to me for a while where my jaw was vibrating consistently for some time. Um, it was more of a refined vibration compared to chattering if you're cold, but still the same sort of thing. Yeah. So if you have something to share today, you can raise your hand like this. You can raise your hand using the reactions on Zoom. You can type in the chat. You can share an audio or video. It's all welcome here. We're just kind of free flowing together. We had a few topics come up. Olga shares here, a month ago, I had an out of body experience while meditating inside a pyramid in Egypt. It took me by surprise and I haven't been able to do it again. Any suggestions on how to experience this again? Well, that's interesting. I imagine it must have had something to do with being inside a pyramid that may have contributed to making it, somewhat more feasible to go out of body. Um, Personally, I'm not an out of body astral travel type of guy. I've had some experiences with it, but I've recognized my work is to actually get in my body, be on the earth, on the ground here as Brent. And so I don't focus on that stuff. I'm actually not skilled much in those areas at all. Um, but I know some good material that you may like to explore, which is Robert Monroe's Journeys Out of the Body, that book, as well as Tom Campbell's My Big Theory of Everything. They explore these ideas of traveling out of the body. Very interesting stuff, really interesting stuff. Lisa's sharing here a bit of context for all of this sudden awakenings and energetic shifts, sharing that there's been a lot of astrological major transits and alignments since the end of December 2025. or I guess 2024. Interesting. Yeah, that tracks with my experience. Okay. Oh, Kat shares here about out of body experiences. Binaural beats may be helpful. Yeah, they can be very powerful as well. Hey, Kundalini is a superpower on YouTube. Welcome. Miss Medieval on YouTube shares, I'm contemplating exploring past life regression hypnotherapy. Do you think it would impact Kundalini awakening? It's an interesting contemplation. I know that there have been some in our community that have done some significant past life regression type work, um, and had meaningful experiences, memories come up. For me, I haven't done any formal past life regression type things, though in deep meditation, sometimes these things will come up. And at times I may dig a little, trying to inquire a little bit more. And whatever does come up, it's interesting, but actually what its usefulness is that it helps me to contextualize my current life and to make sense of what's going on in my life, what I'm here to do, why I'm a certain way, why things are unfolding in the way that they are, because of prior lifetimes of experience, and the context helps me to make peace with what's going on here to better understand myself. So it's cool, to maybe have a past life memory come up and you were a pharaoh or something like that's cool and interesting. But like, what does that have to do with this life? What is that how does that impact and benefit your understanding and your self-awareness in this life? I think that's most important. So if you were to explore hypnotherapy, it's like to better understand yourself now. It's cool, it's fun. But if we set the intention to better understand ourselves in this life, I think we can get a lot of value out of these types of things. Samadhi Blue shares here. Question for a man seeking to awaken Kundalini. It's helpful through the feminine. Do you think for a woman it helps to surrender to the masculine? It's an interesting question. It's an interesting question. I think there's just many factors here to consider. And I don't think it's so binary or black and white, masculine and feminine, right? Because we all have the different archetypes and energetic expressions within us. So there may be cultural implications as well, right? So somebody could be a very feminine in their disposition, but they may be raised in an extremely patriarchal, masculine-oriented society. And so that's also going to influence how their relationship with these archetypes and these expressions of the one unfold. And so I think if we can identify a little bit about where our general disposition is, like if we're more feminine, more masculine, maybe somewhere in the middle as well, this can help us to navigate a little bit and know kind of where our work may lie. But it's not black and white or binary, not at all. I think we all have to do some work with integrating the masculine and the feminine, regardless of our disposition, right? Even the most manliest man, lumberjack type archetype will still have to work towards better integrating his masculine in a conscious way, for example. So I think recognizing where we may be in our journey, what themes are emerging, this can help. But overall, the big picture is to find balance between the two. Maybe some others have some thoughts on this. Okay, let's hear from David.
Yeah, thank you, Brent, for the time again, and welcome everybody.
Welcome.
I'm just halfway through a beautiful book, Spontaneous Kundalini Awakenings by Peter Nielsen, who's a Danish guy who had an awakening at 18 years of age. And to me, it's fabulous. It basically talks about IFS, which is in family systems, which is Richard Swartz's work. And just read quickly what Richard says. He's learned that no matter how negative parts seem to be, they've always got a positive intention with what they're trying to do. So he breaks it down with IFS that there's parts within the subconscious mind, and this may allude to the degree of awakening or balancing for all of us. And he can actually talk, we can talk to them directly, telepathically or verbally or written, it doesn't really matter. But when you engage directly with the parts, whichever arises, then you tend to get an answer. So it can either be done with a therapist through IFS, which is what Richard does and all his facilitators. But the subconscious, of course, holds 95% of what we are. We're unaware of it. So this brings it to light. But he's saying that you can communicate clearly with it directly, which is enlightening to me. A clear example is Peter, this guy who wrote this book, who, as I said, is one of the best Danish writers now. And I'll just start. He said, so he had a horrific awakening, suicidal and, disowned by family and all the rest of the society. The people that led him through meditation had no idea and disowned him. Common story. He said, one day I had so much pressure in my head that I was that purely depressed that I sat down and started writing the words in my head on a piece of paper. It gave me a strange feeling. I slowly pulled out springs like in my brain. When I looked down on the paper, quickly letting my eyes slide over it that were too energized, I realized that I'd written a complete poem. It was finished without any correction or change necessary at all. And my head pressure had gone. So he goes on to say that basically if he didn't write continually daily to allow this energy and this intelligence to come through, then he'd pay for it. So, but he went and directly communicated with the Kundalini in his head, which is what I've got. And I've stood still and got pendulums very clearly to sit down and write because I've gone directly into the energy. So this book is a really great read. It covers much more than that, but I'd highly recommend it to anybody. And healing it through IFS or really dealing with it directly. Not with any protocols, or you don't need outside assistance. They're suggesting IFS helps, but you can directly go into the subconscious, talk to the energy, and writing probably is a great way to get an answer. You may come in dreams or any other way, I don't know, but I just find that very empowering, and it certainly helped Peter. And as I say, he's now one of the best writers and authors in Denmark.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that one. I'm gonna definitely check that out. I've been diving deep into IFS myself, and like you're sharing, David, I found it to be very compatible with this process. Really compatible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And from what I understand, Dick Schwartz is a Kundalini guy as well. Um,
Mm.
my friends Kate West and Joe Beeling have recently posted on their Instagram an interview with Richard Schwartz. I think they're speaking more about psychedelics, but I know he's also um, quite experienced with some other these key themes on the path. And that's a fascinating book. Did that just come out, David? Do you know when that came out?
Yeah, it came through IFS when I was went into it myself, but it's a great read. It's only
Mhm.
small and quite cheap, but I'd highly recommend it to anybody. It gives you an avenue to, well, as it says, healing the damage through IFS. And it's the most direct way. And Faulkner, the guy that I sat with, he swears by it as well, that it helped him. So it's going directly to the energy itself and communicating with it. In other words, going into the subconscious and getting answers. And they're basically saying that one of the parts, so they break it down to parts, is the divine or the self, our pure divinity, or the I am, which I love to call. So, and it's diminishing the ego, all the other identities, and coming back to the self, and then operating purely as the self in this physical realm.
Hmm.
So, unblocking the blockages in the subconscious, allowing it all to flow, and then you're actually operating in the self. You're operating from the self, no other place. So it's just polarization. They call it polarization when these parts are against each other. Obviously, there's conflict and there's energetic pressure and all sorts of other symptoms. But if you harmonize the parts, then there's no more contrast. There's no more polarization. And so it flows as one. It flows as one self, which makes logical sense to me.
Mhm. Me as
But you've
well.
got to go in and
Brilliant.
you've got to inquire whether you do it with an IFS practitioner or by self, then to me, it's a quick way of relief.
Mhm.
And ultimately coming to the wheel of no karma. That's what they suggest. When this is finished and you've dissolved the polarizations, then the wheel of karma is complete.
Fascinating. Thank you
It is
for
fascinating.
sharing that. Yeah, I'm gonna check out that book. Yeah, and of course there are some very skilled IFS therapists that you can
Yeah,
connect with, but Richard Schwartz's book No Bad Parts, I believe he wrote that for the general population so that they can begin to
yeah,
do their own parts work um, outside of therapy. So for those who would just like to get a bit of an idea of how it all works, No Bad Parts is a great book as well.
yeah.
Um, yeah, thank
This
you,
is
David.
wonderful because it's small and it's just on Kundalini. I wanted to
Great.
ask you, Brett, quickly whether you ended up in the hot seat with Abraham.
Oh, not yet, not yet. I hopefully this sometime this year I've got a plan for when I'm gonna go and see Abraham. Probably go down to the States. I've just had a lot going on, but I think it'll happen.
Great. If I could just finish with one line, this has also
Please.
come out in the book. He said that working with Kundalini, he realized this is the author Peter, who suffered for 40 years. He said, if I'd realized that the inner world couldn't attack me if I wasn't afraid of it, he would have had a much, much easier time. So he had serpents coming at him from the waist and all sorts of attacks, and snakes continually around him in dreams and in his visions, all this sort of stuff. And being sucked by vampires in his neck, all these sort of dark approaches. It's all a hologram, but it's very real when you're in it. And
Mhm.
he's saying that if I'd realized the inner world couldn't attack me when I wasn't afraid of it. So ultimately, it's still come, all roads lead to love.
Mm.
So it's a beautiful self-realization when you experience this stuff and you come through and you sit there, no matter whether you're getting attacked or whatever's coming, that this Kundalini is actually helping me heal, or to come back to the non-wheel of karma to release all this stuff and purge it, back to oneness of the I am or the self, so you can then live from that point on from the self, which to me is the ultimate dharma. But that's the journey, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was a big piece for me as well when I learned the only power that these so-called dark entities or forces or beings have is when we forget who we are, right? Yeah. Another thing once came to me was they come to scare the fear out of you. This is their gift. They
From
spook
fear to
you,
love.
the fear comes up, it's released, and we transmute it into love. Yeah.
That's the only road.
Uh-huh. Thank you, David. Thank
Beautiful.
you. So let's hear from Medina.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, Brent. Hi. Okay, so I want to just hear you talk a little bit on your thoughts and if you heard anything about location and Kundalini. What I mean is that when I'm in Europe, my I'm having a very difficult time with my fatigue, especially like since my process started 2 years ago, I've had constant fatigue to the point where sometimes I cannot get up to get a glass of water. So I've just been like lying in bed for 2 years. But when I'm in the tropics, so right now Bali, uh, I come alive and I can move and I'm out and about every day and I just feel myself, but better. And since I came also, I mean, I know that I also have a morning routine now. So every day I wake up, I do 2 hours of sadhana. So I do routine of different kind of like qigong practices and things to kind of ground, etc., which has obviously also been part of helping me a lot. But the fact that I can have energy to even start that routine in the morning, uh, it's just been miraculous how it's just changed since I came to Bali. Just as soon as I arrived, literally like a day or two after, I started getting energy. So my mind is going to, there's something here like, Mama Earth is everywhere, it's just green, it's literal paradise. So maybe that like helps ground me. Um, or it can also be what I'm thinking that maybe I'm meant to be here and Kundalini is kind of forcing me to go in a direction, like when we do things that maybe are not aligned. Um, we don't feel well, or at least I've felt that. So here, maybe I'm meant to stay here, and maybe that's why I'm feeling good. So I don't know. And also, as Tom said, I mean, I could be feeling good now, and then who knows? After a week, I
Mm.
might feel shit again. But at least this is my experience now. I've been here for 3 weeks, a little bit more, and I just feel great and it feels so good.
Mm.
Yeah. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and I'm happy to hear that you're feeling good. Hmm. So I think b before we get into like the spiritual component of it, we can just consider changes in where you are. Di The food is different, the water is different, you get more sun. There's also the element of, you're somewhere new, there's novelty, so this can be energizing, of course. Um, Outside
Can
of
I
that, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just quickly, I want to say the food because we don't have kitchens and stuff, so we're just out eating all the time. So the
Hmm.
food is not good. It's like lots of soil,
Wow.
salt, lots of oils, I mean, it's not definite. I don't think it's the diet, although I mean, bad food also helps sometimes, but I just don't feel it's the diet at the
Uh-huh.
moment. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Well, I think I've come to understand the intelligence of Shakti, of this Kundalini force. She is able to, of course, give us all the energy that we need, and she can also, take it if it's necessary for us to rest. And so I've heard stories, I've observed it in myself. When the time comes that we need the energy, it's there.
Mm,
So you go and you travel, of course, you want to
mm,
experience the place to its fullest. You're there for a reason, not just to stay in bed, which you could do back home anyway, right? And so the energy shows up. I found this to be how my life works with this work. The inspiration shows up, the energy shows up when it's necessary. And when it's not necessary, I find myself not having any. And it just seems
mm,
that this is part of the flow. I would invite you to maybe consider putting less emphasis on being away from home, and that is why you have the energy, and instead to just maybe consider that maybe this is your coming out of hibernation. This is your now rebirth phase, and just see if you can kind of let that ride or ride that wave so that when you do go back home, you don't feel like, okay, I'm back home. I gotta now go back to bed. I'm not in, sunny Bali anymore. Just consider it to be maybe your rebirth, and just keep
mm.
let the momentum go and see how that plays out for you. That's just what's coming to me to share. I don't know exactly why. I know that, of course, there may be certain locations on the earth where maybe we are more resonant with. Like here in Canada, I feel on a very primal level, I feel out of place here. This is not where my body or my ancestors were from, right? Being in the
Mm.
cold, I feel like I'm on another planet. It makes you want to just snuggle up in bed and rest. Whereas maybe some of my European friends, they love it. They have all this energy in the world to go skiing and stuff. That's like the last thing I want to do. So these things can also have an influence as well. But I think in the bigger picture, especially considering Kundalini, I feel like there are these phases, and perhaps you're coming out of one of those phases of rest, and now the energy is there. And so see what happens on when you eventually find your way home.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Thank you,
yeah.
Brent.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah,
Thanks.
I guess what I'm trying to say is don't put so much emphasis on where you are, more so
Yeah.
it's just where you are in your journey, and that's
Yeah.
wherever you are on the planet, right?
Yes, I love
Okay.
Malta too. I'm very happy there.
Hmm.
There's sunshine and the sea is incredible. And I mean, it's a beautiful Mediterranean little island. So
Hmm.
it's not that like subconsciously I
Right.
don't want to be there. I don't feel that. But what you're saying, I mean, I don't want to eye myself or anything like that. But I really hope this is true. And I kind of feel it too. Life is, yeah. Anyway, yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much. It
Yeah.
feels
Oh,
special to hear you say that. So I appreciate
yeah.
it. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. For those who may be stuck in a period of intense fatigue, purification, emotional stuff coming up, they're unable to really get back into life and live life to the fullest because of this great project that is underway. Know that it is a project that is meant to come to a point of stability where then you do return back into the world in some meaningful way. This isn't just your life now just doomed to be, bedridden or whatever, right? Like it's unfolding for a purpose so that you can give your gifts in some way. I don't know how that will be. Everyone will have to find out for themselves, but in some way or another, this isn't happening in vain for no reason, right? It's a project. There is outcome that's, the universe or Shakti is aiming towards here that you're participating in. Yeah. Shane's asking here, can I ask what kind of exercise people find best for Kundalini with fatigue? Yeah, if you have some ideas for Shane, please share. I know walking can be a big one, just walking, right? Stretching. For me, at a certain point when I had the energy lifting heavy weights, like powerlifting, squats, deadlifts, this really brought me back into my body. Though there you need to, of course, have the energy to do so. There was a time where I couldn't even do like two pull-ups. My body would start screaming at me to stop. And so we have to listen to the body. We have to listen to the body. Found gentle yoga to be helpful. Yin yoga as well can be helpful for some. Just um, very slow, few movements, going deep. Okay, let's hear from Wendell.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Hey, Wendell. Yeah, we can.
Hey, sorry I can't get my camera working right now.
No
But
problem.
but I hope the just the audio will be okay.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so first of all, I appreciate your YouTube channel and everything you've been doing. I've been listening to for a while. And I figured today would be a proper day for me to come on here and share my experience. And especially since you said that it's kind of freestyling today, just going kind of off the cuff. And I figured I'll tell you guys about my Kundalini experience.
Please.
Yeah, so it started around COVID, around 2020, end of 2019. And it started in a slightly weird way. And when I say weird is I'm a Brazilian. I grew up eating a lot of barbecue. And the way it started was I would started looking at meat differently. Like I couldn't look at meat anymore, and my diet started changing. And sorry, excuse me, I'm kind of getting over a cold right now, so if I sound a little weak, just want to just emphasize that. But so first of all, my diet changed dramatically, and from that point on, I started getting a very strong ringing in my left ear, and that really freaked me out. I'm like, dang, like I'm gonna have to live the rest of my life with this ringing in my left ear. And every doctor that I would go to, they would tell me, hey, this is tinnitus. And, they threw a pamphlet at me and said that you got to live with this for the rest of your life. And I'm like, all right, well, that really freaked me out because, I'm like every day that passes by, I was getting this really, really strong ringing in my left ear. And I couldn't sleep. My anxiety started going through the roof. And I tried every doctor you could think about. I tried every supplement under the sun. I tried every diet change under the sun. And I went to a um what's it called, a man, I'm sorry, I forgot what it's called right now, but I went to a doctor, and I'm sorry, an acupuncturist, that's what it was. And he looked at me and he was like, hey man, I think this is spiritual. And at the time, I wasn't meditating. I wasn't into any of this type of stuff, like at all. Like I grew up Christian. I believe in God. I believe in Christ. But at that point in my life, this person told me, "Hey, this is spiritual. You need to go and meditate." And I'm like, "Meditate? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I can't even go to sleep, and I'm hearing this ringing in my ear." And I ignored it. So for like about a year or so after that, I'm still trying every supplement. I'm trying different diet changes, and nothing is working. So I had all this crazy stuff happening in my life in that particular year. Let's say 2020 at this point, 2021, and basically, I came across Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. And I read his book, Becoming Supernatural, and uh, I was like, all right, let me give this meditating thing a shot. Like what do I have to lose at this point? Without me getting a little uh, crazy here, but like I was suicidal at that point. I'm like, I don't want to live. Like all I'm hearing is this ringing. This is crazy. Like how could somebody live their life like this? So I tried meditating. and I followed his guided meditations. And the very first day that I tried it, I would see these lights, these things in my vision while I had my eyes closed. So um, basically, what happened was the first day I experienced these lights, these colors while I was meditating. I'm like, oh man, something must be wrong, right? Like, let me go into because I was meditating on a balcony, you know, on a bright sunny day, and I was like, oh, maybe the sun is hitting me and I'm messing up my vision or something like that, right? So I went into a darker room, and I started meditating, and I would see these colors. They were red, purple, green, and I'm like, all right, what is going on? And that really took me on a path where I'm like, all right, what am I seeing? Like, what is going on? You know, like, and it took me onto this path of like buying these metaphysics books and reading, you know, the Bhagavad Gita and just like going down this completely different path that my life was on. And basically it changed my life. So for a good 2 or 3 years, now we're going from about 2020 to about 2023, I was just meditating at least an hour in the morning, an hour at night, an hour at lunch. You know, at the time I was working from home, so I had a lot of free time in a sense. And it completely changed my life. And when I was going around people, they were like, wow, man, you're glowing. Like, what is going on? Like, what are you doing? Like, you know, and I was a completely changed person. And all I would say is like, I'm meditating, you know, and I really couldn't tell them about these amazing experiences I was having, and which all started uh, coming to me because I was trying to get rid of this ear ringing, right? So that was the whole purpose, right? Like, or the whole point, I should say. And it started with me trying to cure my ear ringing, and it developed into this completely different lifestyle, right? Like I said, like my diet changed, my perspective on what this reality of ours is completely just like everything changed, you know? And so sorry, guys, if I'm rambling a little bit. It's
No,
just a
you're
little,
not.
you know, I'm sorry. It's just a little, honestly, this is one of the first times I actually tell this full experience. Because I have tried talking to therapists or, you know, even family members, and I've gotten the answer of like, hey, you can't talk about this. Like, hey, keep it to yourself, or I sense the fear in them. And it's just, you know, I completely understand. But so again, I apologize if I'm kind of like
No,
sound a little
there's
off.
nothing to apologize for. Nothing to apologize for. Yeah, keep going. Keep going.
Um, So, in the midst of these experiences of mine, what developed was, and I want to really emphasize here, I did not go searching for this. Like I did not. Like it just came to me, and I learned how to leave my body. That was one thing. I had experiences with entities, and I was never afraid. It was just everything felt so natural in a weird way, like I've done it before. And I just felt like I was on cloud nine for a few years. I had all these amazing experiences happening around my life, and I'm like, wow, you know, not that I'm the chosen one, right? But like I felt like, why am I the only one in my family, or even like my close friends, why I'm going through this type of stuff, you know? But so it definitely isolated me, and it uh kind of turned me into somebody that was, when I would go out with friends, I couldn't really what am I looking for? Like I couldn't relate to them anymore, and we didn't have the same type of topics of conversation. And I'm just like, wow, like, you know, they're talking about the same type of stuff you know, we were talking about a few years ago, but uh, now I'm over here. I just want to tell them about these experiences I had in meditation, how I'm like leaving my body and I'm seeing these amazing things. And so it really turned my life trajectory in a completely different way, you know? And it all started because of I had this ear ringing, which goes back to the acupuncturist, right? The only doctor that was like, hey, this is spiritual. You need to meditate on it. And it's kind of funny because that was one of the first things I heard and I denied it. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? You want me to go into a dark room and meditate? Like, get out of here. But he was right. You know, and I see that now. But yeah, so can I tell you about some of the experiences I had like during that time?
Please. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so okay. So basically there was I'll give you a few of them and I'll lead to the Kundalini moment because I had no idea what Kundalini was. But I was well led up to that Kundalini moment, I was having other experiences like like I said, like I so there was one time where I not chose, but I had a feeling like go meditate in my living room on my couch. And usually I would meditate in my office, my home office, on one of my bean bags. But like I chose to go to my living room this day, and all of a sudden, I during my meditation, sorry, it's my I'm sitting over this flu, and I sat down on my living room couch, and all of a sudden my body jerked up, and I wanted to stand up, and I stood up, and I was like, okay, that's weird. Like that's never in my life happened before. Like why did I just in the middle of a meditation stand up? So I chose to sit back down, and then it started to happen again, but I had a feeling of like, hey, go sit on your dining room chair. So I did that. I sat on my dining room chair, and again, it happened. And all of a sudden, I'm outside of my body and I'm looking at myself. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, oh my God. When I realized, sorry, I'm just clearing out my throat here. When I was outside of my body, and when you're outside of your body, you see a 360-degree view. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm outside of my body, I'm looking at myself, and I kind of freaked out. And I was like, get back in, get back in. And I instantly got back into my body, and I sat back down in the chair, and I felt almost like my energy was like drained out. And basically that set off a chain of these memories I had of doing this when I was a child. And
Hmm.
I was like, what like is going on? Like I started remembering me doing this from kindergarten up until about even high school, to be honest. But I would always dismiss them as dreams. But really, I was outside of my body and I would walk back in and go to sleep, you know? So, it was crazy. It just like I started remembering things. I'm like, oh my God. And it made me feel better too, because I'm like, I don't know if me being outside of my body, if that's a bad thing, you know, like growing up Christian, you know, it's kind of a sensitive topic. If you tell, you know, your pastor or your priest these type of things, you know. So I'm like, is this bad? Is this good? Like what's going on? But and then I kind of made myself feel better because I would be like, hey, like I remember doing this when I was in kindergarten, you know? Like, does that make it demonic? You know, like what's going on? But I've kind of gotten past that. But regardless, after that moment, for the next maybe few months, I basically uh I started looking into leaving your body. Like, how do you do it? What type of techniques are there? And I kind of figured out how to do it on my own. And I was like, oh my God, so this is like something you can actually do, right? And I definitely have encountered entities, but never anything that I was afraid of, if that makes sense. Especially being a Christian, I would always say, you know, like, you know, if if I ever encountered something where I'm like, hey, this is kind of scaring me or whatever, I feel the power of Christ within me, and I'll say the name of Jesus Christ, So I've never felt afraid, if that makes sense. But
Mhm.
regardless, you know, and I hope I'm not I'm not trying to push Christianity or, say anything like that. I'm just saying like that's how I grew up. Um, but like I said, I grew up a Christian, and this thing, whatever this is, Kundalini, this energy, I didn't look for it, but it found me. And so now I'm starting to have these out of body experiences, and um basically, man, I have so much stuff. It's kind of, it honestly is a lot, but I'm thankful that over the course of the past 4 to 5 years, I was documenting it all. So, um, I'll kind of fast forward here. uh, so like I'm kind of riding cloud nine. Everything is like amazing in my life, and I had this moment where I was driving home with an ex-girlfriend back to our house, and I had this like flashback to something that happened between my brother and I, and that uh, was kind of traumatic. But it's not something I lose sleep over. But it was kind of like it made me feel a certain type of way. Like I felt some like pressure in my chest, and I'm like, what is going on? Why am I thinking about this? And um, anyway, the first thing I thought about was, all right, cool. I'm like a master meditator at this point. I'm meditating in the morning, in the afternoon, at night. I'm like, I'm gonna get home. I'm gonna meditate on this, right? Like I'm gonna let this go. Not a big deal. So the next day, I went to meditate, and the first thing that happened was, for the first time in my life, this has ever happened. And mind you, I have been meditating for like almost 2 years, every single day. I felt this energy come shooting up my spine, and it went up my spine. It hit my heart. When it hit my heart, it shot through my left arm, and I collapsed on the floor. So when I collapsed on the floor, I'm breathing really heavy. I'm like, oh, oh. I thought I was having a heart attack. And mind you, I'm 30 right now. I'm 33 years old. But at the time this happened, that was 31, maybe 32. And so I'm like, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack at this age. Like, what's going on? And I went to the ER, and they're like, they did all the tests on me. They're like, you're just having an anxiety attack. Like, you're fine. I'm like, anxiety attack? Well, what the heck does that word even mean? Like I know people have anxiety, but that's not something that I ever really went through. So it was very, very interesting experience for me, because after that, every time I tried to meditate, I would uh, have this energy shoot up my spine and then hit this blockage around my heart. And like I couldn't complete my meditation. So I would get scared. So I'm like, what is going on? So I went from meditating every day, multiple times a day, to meditating, trying to meditate once a week, to once a month, to once every few months. Like I completely cut it out of my life. Now, before this happened, let me go back to the ear ringing, right? The tinnitus that every doctor told me that was incurable. It went from a 9 out of 10 to about a 1 out of 10. There was days where I'm like, I cannot believe that this meditation has cured my tinnitus, when every doctor I went to told me that it was for life. So I definitely realized that it was like that acupuncture said, like this is something spiritual, right? This is not physical. And so after this I'm not even gonna say the Kundalini experience. I'll give you that one in a second. But this energy rising up, hitting my heart, making me to stop meditating because I got afraid. Right? Honestly, that's what it was. It was a very uncomfortable pain. Um, what was happening was I was having intense dreams where I was talking to these different beings. So very, nothing negative, but it was just like I was floating outside of my body before going into bed, and nothing that like I was afraid of, but it was definitely intense. And there were days, weeks where I would literally be crying because I wanted to go to sleep, but I couldn't. Um, I was just basically like waking up every hour or so, and it was causing this crazy pressure between my relationship where I didn't want to be around anybody. I didn't want to, be social. It was just like this intense thing, but every doctor I would go to, they would tell me, "You're okay. You're fine. Your vitals, everything's good. It's just anxiety." Or, "Hey, take this pill. Take this. You'll be fine." But I'm grateful physically nothing was going on, but I couldn't tell them about all this crazy stuff, these dreams, these visions, these things. And when I did try to, they would tell me it was dissociative disorder. It was man, a bunch of other stuff, basically. I don't even remember what it was now, but I'm just like, eh, does that even really mean anything? Because I couldn't tell them the whole thing, like I couldn't tell them about these other things because I would know where that would lead to. They would say that you're just crazy. You're just, you got to end up in a psych ward or something. But so I'm having all these crazy months of just these experiences, and like I'm not meditating like I was. And I'm going more and more to doctors trying to figure out what's going on with my body. I'm having all these hormonal uh, issues, right? One month I have a thyroid problem, and the other month I have another issue, and I'm just like, what is going on? And mind you, nothing changed. It's not like I had some crazy drastic change in my life, like at all. I really didn't. But my body was just going through these changes, and so I had one day where my girlfriend came home, and she said something to me where I kind of snapped at her and I didn't give her a proper response. Like, oh, dang, like that was very rude of me. Like I instantly recognized it. I was like, hey, I gave her a kiss. I'm like, hey, I'm really sorry for that. I'm gonna go upstairs. I'm gonna meditate. I shouldn't have responded that way. So everything was okay. But for the first time, I chose to meditate in my bathtub where I put a little bit of warm water and I went in there and I went to meditate. And this is when I had my Kundalini experience. And at this point, I was not researching Kundalini like at all. Um, and I saw this blue snake-like energy, like an electric snake, um, come towards me. And it like when I saw it coming towards me in my meditation, so I'm about 20 to 30 minutes into it, and it's all dark, and I see this blue snake-like energy coming towards me, and I remember opening up my eyes, and now I'm in my bathtub, right? And I'm like, okay, this is weird. I close my eyes, and I still continue to see it, and even me telling you this, I'm getting goosebumps because I felt it come up towards me and wrap around my spine, and it started to wrap around my spine. It went up to my heart and it went up to my throat. And when it got to my throat, I felt a bulge in my throat. I felt it open, and it said, or I heard, "Speak your truth." And then it disappeared. And I have never had any other meditations like this. I never had like something so vivid or physical, I should say, where I felt it in my body. Like I don't know how else to put it. Like I know the feeling of having something wrap around your spine and open your throat. And so having these experiences has really like isolated me because I don't want to sound crazy to people or especially the people that I love, but it's also like I love it. Like I feel special, in a way, not to sound conceited or cocky or anything like that, but I feel like us who have these type of experiences are kind of going through something cool, something special. So I don't know. After that whole experience with the that I just told you about, my meditation in the bathtub and the Kundalini thing, I'm gonna be honest with you. Things fell apart in my life, and basically what happened was I got into depression, and I ended up selling my house in San Diego. I ended up leaving this 7-year relationship, and then moving back cross country, and then also leaving a job with or a career, I should say, for a business that I had helped build for almost 20 years, for 15, 20 years, where I had a very secure, very comfortable job, but like nothing made sense after all that, like, and not that it made sense, but it just nothing felt right. So I'm kind of in this weird transition period right now where I'm just trying to figure out like what makes sense. Like, and I've heard all these stories about people who go through Kundalini awakenings and they have their entire lives just change, So um, I'm like, is that what's happening with me? Because it kind of sounds like it, like leaving a 7-year relationship with somebody that I was certain I was going to marry and be with for the rest of my life. We had even purchased a home together, and everything just lined up. Even if I tell you about that story about how we ended up together, you'd be like, yeah, the stars aligned for that one, like, so I definitely feel very guided. Even before this whole Kundalini experience, before that, people will tell me like, "Hey, man, like you got angels, like you got some guardian angels around you or something," because like the stuff that happens in your life is just really cool, and I definitely agree with that. So now I'm in this position where I'm back in New Jersey, and uh like everything that I thought was going to happen has kind of fallen apart,
Yeah.
my career, my home, and everything that I thought I believed in, it's just like gone. Even friends, even people that I were like, oh man, like I'm gonna be with these people forever, like it's just it kind of fallen apart, and I've been left with the bare bones, and
Yeah.
it's made me like more appreciative of it too, because I'm back to like having my 3, 4 best friends that I grew up with, my mom, my dad, my brothers. So people, it's almost like everything that wasn't for me has kind of fallen apart, if that makes sense, or at least for the time being, or at least for this next chapter in my life, is I'm almost being like refocused, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
It's definitely scary, I'm not gonna bullshit. Uh, I've gone through a few channels on YouTube, and where I asked the same question. I'm like, when does this get good? Like, what's going on? Like I'm afraid. Is it, uh, like is this something bad, or kind of going back with Christianity? I spoke to sorry. I don't know if you're familiar with Bill Donahue on YouTube. He
Mhm.
ran. He used to run a channel, or he still has a channel called Hidden Meanings. And he, in the late 80s and early 90s, he would fuse Christianity with Kundalini and
Oh,
meditation.
yeah, yeah. I'm familiar with his work. Sorry, I just not his name, but yeah, you reminded me. Yeah.
Yeah, so in the mid after I had that experience in the with the blue energy snake wrapping around my spine, the first thought I had was this guy. Had been following his YouTube channel, and um I reached out to him, and he hasn't been active like at all. He must be in his late 80s now. All his videos are starting to resurface. I messaged him, and I just basically told him what I told you, and he
Mm.
replied to me in email. He's like, "Hey Wendell, like, I understand what you're going through. Unfortunately, you shouldn't try to explain this to anybody because they're just not going to understand it. And you were touched by God's light and it's from a different dimension. And this is not a dimension of the mind, it's a dimension of light or God.
Mm,
And he basically encouraged me. He's like, hey, this doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but he actually recommended me to keep my meditation short. He's like, don't do long meditations, and he gave me a few other recommendations, and that definitely helped me feel good. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, here's a man who also believes in Christ and is encouraging me. Like, hey, just keep your meditation short and go with the flow. And this doesn't mean it's going to be easy,
mm,
but
yeah.
you're not on the wrong path. Basically, is the message I got. But yeah, basically what I want to say is everything was kind of stripped from me
Hmm.
in the past,
Yeah.
especially the past year. Everything I thought was solid and what was going on, it went away. And I'll tell you, like, I lost people where I'm like, I would give a liver and I would give half my liver and a kidney for this person, like
Hmm.
they're going to be in my life forever. And it was just like their true colors were shown,
Yeah.
and I obviously
Well,
there's always two sides to every story, but it's just very interesting.
yeah. So Wendell, fascinating story. I'm gonna have to interrupt. I'm really sorry. I see Nick has got his hand up as well, but thank you so much for sharing here openly, perhaps for the first time in a place like this. Really, really interesting journey that I know many can relate with. You've got a lot of support in the chat here, a lot of people commenting on some of the different themes of Christianity. Um, lots of good stuff coming up here. So if our call begins to end, what I will do is, sorry, when our call begins to end, I will keep the chat open. And so if you'd like to follow up with anybody who's responded to you, you're welcome to here. Because when I close the Zoom call, the chat will disappear. But really fascinating stuff. Lots of people commenting on the ear ringing as well. Yeah. Wendell, thank you so much for sharing your journey. Got a lot of love in the chat here.
Of
Yeah.
course, man. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. And others are sharing here, like that's Sherwin shares you. That's Kundalini for you. Dismantles your past and takes everything away and kills the old you and starts everything new going forward. Same thing happened to me. Yeah. And generally speaking, the same sort of thing happened to me too. Right. Yeah. Lots relating. You're not alone. Thank you so much for your courage today to share. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's hear from Nick.
How are you, Brent? How are
Hey,
you,
Nick. I'm
everyone?
great.
Hope
How are
everyone's doing
you?
well. Doing well, thanks. It's been a little bit of a wild ride the last couple of weeks, you could say, but things are okay at this moment. And I also want to take the chance to thank everyone who's shared so far. It was a great listen to you, Wendell, just a moment ago. It's always great to hear someone who hasn't shared before, I think, um, lay things out in such detailed terms like that. I think it's hearing all the nuts and bolts of someone's awakening is always really fascinating for me. A lot I can relate with, a lot I think a lot of other people can relate with too. And hopefully, if Brent is right about a lot of people who are having awakenings beginning at the moment, listening to you, Wendell, will give them some courage to come and speak as well. Um, I've just got a couple of things to talk about today. I'll leave it pretty quick. First thing that caught my attention listening to Wendell just a moment ago was when you were meditating in the bathtub. Something I can relate to very much. I like to myself slip into meditation really at any kind of point whatsoever, maybe in the queue at the grocery shop, or this is my sort of usual spot. I'm kind of reclined on a couch here in a very comfortable kind of position. I've spent a lot of times in my awakening lying down, either on my back or sort of curled in a fetal position, sort of thing. Very symbolic of death and rebirth, also very comfortable. I think a lot of people, when they start meditating, or maybe when they begin a Kundalini awakening and they're not yet familiar with how everything works, you can, I say this again, hopefully for those very new people who are hopefully coming along and finding this brilliant podcast. Um, a lot of people can be under the impression that there's particular ways you need to go about things. Say you need to sit up rigid and straight with a straight spine, in a lotus position without a chair with a backing on it or anything like that. And my experience is really that that's not true at all. I actually spend a lot of time on this very couch right here with a kind of like my spine bent back, actually. If you can imagine me here, I'll sort of try and give you a demonstration, kind of just
Mm.
like this. So my spine sort of curled over backwards, or I might just be sitting in a reclined position like this, or like I said, lying down, sitting up, standing up sometimes. Like anything goes. You just listen to your body and figure out what is needed at that any given time. So yeah, anyway, just I thought that was worth saying after I heard about Wendell, excuse me, in the bathtub. Um, Meditating in a bathtub is a good way to go though, isn't it? Isn't it? I've just got a quick poem I'm going to read and then I'll sign out.
Oh,
Um,
please.
Directed by Shakti and noted down by myself. Rested tales a sight behold, a bottle brush now swept ashore, with fresh papyrus dancing stem, from myself to myself. Forget the quest for fireflies' doom, forget the lilies didn't bloom. Remember that which cradles nest, connection, love, forgive, and rest. Thank you. I'll leave it to Brent.
Oh, Nick, thank you. Beautiful poetry. Mystical. And a beautiful share as well. Yeah, I can relate with the lack of emphasis on proper posture at times. For years, my meditation was in a reclined position. And sometimes it would turn into a nap as well. That's how it goes. At one point, I had an experience where I was sitting upright with my spine straight, and I began having a pretty significant energetic experience in which the voice of Shakti herself told me, "Put your head back against the wall." So she gave me permission to not sit in this, perfect lotus posture. I heard the other day um, from a very experienced meditation practitioner that they were practicing in a Zen community, very deep in meditation, and they had a sort of a novice with the stick, and then they go around with the stick and they hit you with the stick if your posture isn't right. And so they were deep in meditation, and this novice came around and hit them with a stick and took them out of this deep state because they weren't sitting in the perfect posture. And so what we were discussing was that ideally, whoever is given that stick to then hit people needs to have a very fine-tuned intuition to know who actually needs to be hit. It's not just based on whether their posture is perfect or not. You have to be able to tune in how is their meditation actually going so that you don't disturb a really profound and deep meditation, right? And so that goes to show, like Nick, you're sharing here, we don't have to be sitting in this perfect posture in order to really go deep and do a lot of great work for ourselves. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I think many people get this fixation about, they're not doing it right, but could be doing it perfectly. Yeah. Oh, and you've got a great compliment here from Jake, Nick, on your poetry. Jake is also a writer, so that's a good one. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you again, Brent. Just quickly, what changed my perspective was the renaming of Kundalini. Some wise soul told me that it's my own life force. So rather than taking Kundalini as an outside energy which can be against us, to refer to it as it's your own life force.
Yeah.
So that deletes separation, and it allows much more acceptance and compassion to work with it. When you understand all these other evolutionary tensions that arise are coming to expand the self back to the self, and get rid of these blockages or polarizations within us, then working with our own life force, which is what it is, it's much more freeing and accommodating to work with it in compassion and love and see it for what it is. And
Yeah.
Hicks talks about feeling lighter and freer and following joy. Well, to me, the non-physical guidance, the perfect inbuilt guidance for every single one of us is if it feels lighter and freer. So if it
Mm.
feels lighter and freer, that's the path. So that also deletes fear. If you know that all these stuff that's coming to us in the evolution process is actually helping and assisting us get back to the self, and you follow lighter and freer with coming to it with love and compassion that this is helping me, or undoing these blockages to allow the energy to flow back to the self, then it's complete.
Mm.
So working with our own life force rather than any separation of naming perhaps Kundalini as a separate energy doing us harm.
Yeah. Amazing. Brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, David. I've heard this idea, and it lands for me. It's that it's this in its in her dormant state. This Kundalini Shakti is not that she's doing nothing. She's just taking care of the mundane, the breathing, the heart beating, the digestion. It's when she begins to awaken, then she begins to then process all of the other processes related to the transformation of consciousness. But it's not separate from you. It's the same thing that's been beating your heart this whole time. It's your body. It's your life force, not this force that came from somewhere else and started to go up your spine and whatever. It's always been you. It's always been us. And so we can know that we're safe, right? We're safe. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, David. Samadhi Blue on YouTube shares here, what is the difference with Kundalini opening at the feet compared to the base of the spine? Yeah, so I don't know the specific details of the difference of that. I just know that it seems everyone has a different type of awakening experience. This idea of it rising from the root chakra or the base of the spine up the spinal column in a sort of um, chronological manner through each chakra, that's just an oversimplification. For some, it begins in the head. For some, it begins in the feet, in the toe. I've heard of um, Julie Hoyle on my YouTube channel. I interviewed her. She described receiving Shaktipat from a great master in a vision who touched her elbow, and this triggered the awakening. I think this is just a full body process. It's a full body process, and it happens in so many different ways, so many different ways. So I don't know the exact meanings of why some experience it from the feet and some from the root and some from the head. I really don't have the answers for that, but it's all valid. It's all valid. And part of my work here is to try and show that there's so many ways this can unfold so that people recognize that they're going through Kundalini awakening as opposed to something going wrong with their system because it doesn't map over to, some other description they may have heard of. It's all very different, though of course there are general themes. So let's hear from Tom.
Yeah, the feet thing, my understanding of that is that feet and legs are part of Muladhara chakra.
Hmm.
So it makes sense that for some it would begin there, others higher up, but they're a part of they're connected to the earth, and
Hmm.
so that's going to make sense. They're nothing. There's no, as far as I know, and I've read, I've experienced that pain in my big toe, left side. It hurts, but then it hurt in the chakra itself at the perineum. So yeah, it's the same thing. Not to worry. It's going well, I would imagine.
Yeah, great perspective. Makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, yeah. Blue Star shares here, we have an earth chakra below our feet. Right. Yeah. Fascinating. This has been a fun call. Thank you all for taking the lead and sharing so openly. I didn't have much to share today. So I'm happy everyone else could take the opportunity to share, relate, support one another. Some links in the chat there. You can visit kundaliniawareness.org. I've got my course. If you'd like to meet one-on-one, you can find out about that at brentspirit.com. If you'd like to offer a donation, I really appreciate it. It allows me to do this. Thank you all so much for all of your support, engagement, dropping by to share here. We'll meet tomorrow for a Kundalini Q&A meeting, 2 p.m. Eastern. You can register at brentspirit.com/KundaliniQA. Link is in the description. Appreciate you all so, so much. Appreciate you all. Thank you so much. We'll meet again next week as well, most likely. We'll see how it goes. You can join the Facebook group if you want to continue some of these conversations as well. See you next time. Much love, everyone. Thank you all for the support. I see you in the chat. I see you. Much love.